Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast. Today, we have a very special episode for you all today. Today, we are talking to the great Madison Mikhail Bush. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm great, Martin. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for coming on because your schedule is something else with your work life and your personal life. So I'm really glad that you were able to find the time to talk to me today.
Oh, old friends take priority. So even if it's 8 a.m., we will make this happen.
That's true. 8 a.m. right before work. But the reason that I honestly wanted to talk to Madison, especially this month, is because obviously we've been highlighting women during Women's History Month. And Madison, since senior year of college, I've already proclaimed as the GOAT. And every time I tweet her, I always use the GOAT emoji. And I had to highlight her on Women's History Month because she's simply the best. And she does so many great things. And I just wanted our audience to know what she does. So, Madison, if you can just tell everyone quickly like who you are and what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect. Well, like Martin said, my name is Madison Mikhail Bush. And I highly recommend having friends like Martin in your life that can hype you up years and years and years before you do anything significant. It's great for people to see your potential and what you can do. And it's true. Every time he tweets me, he uses a goat emoji. Um, but what I do and what I've been trying to do for a very long time is make doing good, especially volunteering in your community, as simple as getting an Uber. And what I mean by that is I looked around, growing up, college, after college, everything in between. And I realized that it's literally easier for me to book a room in Spain on my phone or get a dog walked from an app or, pretty much you name it. We have on demand services for everything, but we didn't have any on demand connection to volunteering in our own local communities. And I thought that was really messed up. and it's been messed up for a long time. Nonprofits are like the backbone of our communities, and they have the worst technology platforms. And when you look, 30 years down the line, and we could talk about, the technology breakdowns during COVID and how that has affected our communities and our nonprofits, we have some major, major problems. So we've been really trying to bring better tech, free tech, and people power to nonprofits. Oh, and it's called Point.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe it's too early for me to do this, but our platform's called Point. We're known for our community app, which is like ClassPass for volunteering, and then we have a whole nother back-end platform that allows nonprofits and businesses to manage volunteers. So that's who we are.
Good job catching the name.
We just got to circle back.
You got to circle back. So with Point, and you said you've been like it was easier to get an Uber than to find volunteer opportunities. So when you decided that you were going to make Point, and what were the steps that you took? Like, how did you? Because not that many people know how to like make an app or even like research how to make an app. How did you do all that?
Well, it was a nightmare. I starting Point has been one of the hardest experiences because, living in Ohio, like you said, we don't know how to make technology platforms. It's not like we're in San Francisco and you can throw a rock and you can hit a developer walking down the street, right? Most of us in the Midwest have really no concept of how the internet works.
Mhm.
It's a magical place, and then we don't really understand all that goes into development. So, me as a science nerd, I've always been a nerd of some sort my entire life. I really had to Google and YouTube my way into understanding what went into this. I was taken advantage of so many times. I lost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I've started from ground zero twice now. I mean, the process of me understanding what this was like was very difficult. Um, I wasn't necessarily in the right place to understand or to get resources that I needed to get started. So, again, I had to start and stop a lot of different times.
During that start and stop, and you even just highlighted losing thousands of dollars then and now, like, how discouraging was that? Did you ever just think, like, "Is this something I really wanna do?" after, like, you having to stop and then start again? Like, how did you keep going?
Specifically, I when I first got started, we launched a giving website, which we called One Life back in the day. It was a bad name. But, I launched it when I was in college. I spent all of my nights doing it. I took a bunch of C's and a bunch of classes I shouldn't have taken. I was bombing.
Mm,
Um, and I put all my time and all my energy in developing this website, and it was a huge failure. It was a failure not because it just took me so long to get it off the ground, but because it had no growth potential. And I put my face and my identity and all of my energy into making that work. And when it didn't work to my expectations, um, it was a really big embarrassment. And I think that, you know, when you pour your life into something, especially so early, I was in my early 20s. My parents wanted me to go be a doctor. I was not doctoring. And, when I graduated college, I was a kid living in my parents' basement trying to make this work, and it just wasn't working. And, I felt really humiliated. I had done TEDx talks, I'd been on USA Today. Um, you know, it just didn't work. And it was so embarrassing. And I think, honestly, that start and stop of just getting over my own pride and saying, you just got to try again was sometimes like the hardest hurdle to get over.
no, I hear you because I was actually before, this, rewatching that TED Talks because I wanted to know also what year that was and, like, how old we were back then. Because I think on YouTube it says it was 7 years ago. I don't know if that's the correct thing,
I think that's it.
which is crazy. So, like, seeing you there, like, 7 years ago, like, if anyone just saw that and not knowing the backstory, they'd be like, "Oh, she's doing great, like, things are, like, to the moon," but then you just saying, like, "Yeah, you were just on USA Today and doing TED Talks, but you were in your parents', basement struggling with this type of stuff, and your parents wanted you to be a doctor," and I feel like almost that is every, like, immigrants' parents, like, that's thing. Like, I know my own parents. I mean, you talked about doing science. My dad obviously loves science, and that's what he
You
does,
know
you
the
know?
pressure.
Yeah. So you feel that. So how was their support though? Like once you're like, I'm not gonna be a scientist or doctor. This is what I'm passionate about. Like, how did they support you in that way?
If you're listening to this and you also have parents, which you have to choose between being a doctor or a disappointment, we get you. We understand. We've been there.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't have to be a medical doctor to my parents' satisfaction. They just, either get your PhD, get your MD,
Yeah.
and one of the two, you'll be fine. And I did neither. I didn't even get a master's. So I'm like the most undereducated person in my family. So um, it took a bit for my parents and family to not understand. I don't know how I phrase this. For a while, people thought I was just doing like a cute project. Like,
Mhm.
this is your pet project. You're trying to save the world, but, go do this other thing. What people didn't really understand is that it took every bit of my time to get something off the ground. And if you start something new, especially if you're building large platforms, CRM systems, if you're trying to onboard thousands and thousands of people to your platform, that take everything you got. And, you know, I'm not super sure if everyone understands what I do now because, if you live in a family where science is everything, they really don't understand any other career.
No,
But I think we've gotten to the point where they understand the impact that point has and what we do. Um, so if you are starting out your career, if you're switching careers, if you're doing something that your family thinks is just whack, um, a lot of people have been there, and it's okay. They'll catch on. You know who the most supportive person was my boyfriend, now husband at the time. I remember we were having dinner one night, and he just looked at me. And he said, "Are you going to go for it? Like, are you actually going to do this? Like, are you going to try? Stop studying for the GRE, even though I took it. Stop studying. Go do this, and just do it with all your heart. Do it with all your time. And once it fails, or if it fails, you've given it your best shot." I've failed a couple times. I've been bankrupt a couple times, but I'm still here.
that's
So
true.
you just keep on putting one foot in front of the other if you believe what you're doing is important.
Was that conversation at dinner with your boyfriend, now husband, and plug for him, great guy. Was that the breakthrough? Like, I'm gonna do it. Like, this is where it's gonna take off, or was there another moment that you were like, I finally am on my stride?
I think there are thousands of those moments. I think when you are doing something that breaks the mold and something you didn't expect for your life, you have to choose that quite repetitively.
And then obviously you are the founder and CEO of Point, but you don't do everything in regards to Point. So what was it like building that team? Like, as obviously you're talking to people, seeing like their interests and all that, seeing how they can help not just you, but a mission of making, like, doing charity work super easy, that I can go on my phone right here, click on the Point app saying, hey, I want to look for volunteer work on the 30th. And then, like, how was it building that team?
Really hard. Your team is your most important asset. And it took me years to find the right people. At first, just getting off the ground, I hired a dev firm in San Francisco that took advantage of me and my inexperience, took thousands of dollars, and left me kind of back at ground zero after I paid them a lot of money and didn't get a product. Um, I had tweeted, "Where could I get $5,000?" And I got connected to, which is very desperate. I understand. And I got connected to the senior engineering manager at Twitter
Mhm.
through a friend by Twitter that said, tweeted at me and said, "Wait, give me a second." I didn't get $5,000, but I got a better introduction. Um, I literally scraping at the barrel because, again, I had lost all my money and I didn't have a team. I didn't have a product. I had called a, a, a friend that I had met at a frat party at my husband's frat years and years ago, who said, "Hey, let me know if you ever need help like developing this app. And you have this idea." I called him out of the blue 2 years later after never talking to him since probably that night.
Mm.
And it was the night before Thanksgiving. And I said, "Hey, I don't know where you are in life, but remember 2 years ago at this frat party, you said you'd build me an app. Is that offer still good?" And he was really shocked because it was 11 o'clock again, the day before Thanksgiving. And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, I absolutely." And then I like tried to circle back to the small talk, and I asked him where he was working, and he was working at Google. So he and the senior engineering manager at Twitter actually built our first MVP product at Point. And then from there, I had to find volunteer developers. Remember, at this point, I'm broke
Yep.
because I
Bro.
lost all my money.
Mhm.
Yep. And we really like scraped our way to a product, which is not how you do things. Normally, you make this like MVP product and you show it to a bunch of investors who give you money, but no one was going to give me money. This like random girl from Ohio that has never done tech before. I was like laughed out of investor offices. People canceled their meetings with me. I went to every single Rotary Club in Central Ohio trying to fundraise money. I got $100 out of 24 meetings. this is how bad it was to start. It was very depressing. And I'm like, again, I'm living in my parents' basement at the time, very broke without anything to show for it. So during that time, gathering your team is really, really hard. I got really lucky, 2 years in, finding my CTO now, who came on. We hired him for a 2 week uh, sprint of work. And then he ended up basically asking to stay forever. So his name is Alex, and I don't thank him enough. And Alex and I have been a team now for about 3 years. And we rallied and brought his friends on from there and kind of got going. But I think it took me from the start of One Life to finding a really great technical partner. It almost took me 5 years. Like that's how long it took for me to get off the ground. It's embarrassing to talk about.
I mean, but it's part of the journey. And then while you were doing One Life to point, and you were going to all these meetings, and you were broke, were you working to try and like, I don't know, use any like work money? Did you have another job while trying to do this stuff, or were you just still solely on One Life to point at this point in time?
Oh yeah, I had a side science hustle. I still sometimes use that side science hustle because if I'm going to be honest, I still don't get paid. I can't believe I've been doing this for so long and I still don't make any money. Um, I pay other people. We have about a team of 10 now.
Mhm.
But I pay them and I don't get to pay myself yet. So I am I'm 7 years in to trying to solve this problem. Two different companies, multiple different starts and stops. I'm still broke.
Well, I feel like that's a lot of people right now, like who are still broke. I mean, I work for the government. I'm still broke, so I don't think you're alone in that department. So when you were talking about you were going on Twitter, you were going on YouTube, looking at all that stuff, did you also have to look at that stuff too to like do the filing for like the Secretary of State, like making sure that you filed the right forms for them and like getting the right tax things to like report to the IRS? Because even though it's a nonprofit, you still have to like report stuff to the IRS, right?
Now we're two different entities. We're both a nonprofit and a for profit. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of filings to do. But yes, I Google and YouTube my way into everything. Um, this year, I'm actually hiring an accountant.
Oh.
So this is a big step for us.
Mhm.
But, when you're starting out, you have to do everything by yourself. You have to be a lawyer. You have to write legal documents. You have to understand tax law. You have to literally become 10 different professions that you never expect you had to do, especially when you don't have that capital. Um, and, we raise money from friends and family. We've raised investor money now. We're getting to that point, but, have I raised the Series A 1 point whatever or 2 point something? No. Is that coming? We're working on it.
That was awesome. And getting an accountant, yeah, you need one, especially don't want to mess up. But I was like looking at previous conversations you've had, and you've been featured in almost everything under the sun. Columbus CEO, Forbes. I think the one I was reading last night was the Future 50, which I didn't even know Future 50 existed. I honestly just Googled your name just to read every single thing that I didn't know about you. So, and then the one that was really interesting to me, which was a little while back, 2019, 5 things I wish someone told me before I became a CEO. And that was with Authority Magazine. And I felt like that one was very candid because, as you were just saying, like, it was hard. Like, just to put it in simple terms, it was really hard to do all of that. And with it being Women's History Month this month, how hard did it make it harder being a woman CEO doing all these things? Did you feel like that played effect, that people weren't taking you seriously because you're a woman? Like, how did you feel about that?
I had a couple things that didn't necessarily make me the best candidate, especially for funding. And I want to say these things with a grain of salt because I truly believe that in this world, there are a lot of advantages and there are a lot of disadvantages that every human being has. And, you know, someone like me, I am very privileged in a lot of different ways. And I think that so many times we focus on our disadvantages rather than our advantages. Being in Ohio makes it kind of tough for us to, get a leg up in the tech world. But so does living in Ghana or
Mhm.
Nigeria or other parts of the world. So I want to say these things with a grain of salt because I understand that I have a great leg up on life. um, but yes, essentially, it is difficult to be a woman in tech. It is difficult to be a young woman in tech from Ohio that has no background and no experience. Yes, it's hard for, me as a young woman with a high squeaky voice and acne walking in to be sitting in a room with all 50-year-old gray haired white guys
Mhm.
and people asking me when my boss is coming. That's tough. But everybody goes through those moments. And I think that no one is necessarily excused from them, no matter your demographic or your gender profile or anything like that. So it's tough. You know what also has been tough is it's been tough to be pregnant and CEO. um, you have this fear once I'm having a baby, and when you start fundraising and having a baby, a lot of people count you out. As a woman, when you decide that you're ready to bring another life into this world, the business world thinks that you're about to retire.
Why?
And I think a lot of women step out of work during that time. Investors will ask you, are you planning to have kids? And you're sitting there and you're like, I'm 4 months pregnant. um, and it's uncomfortable. It's very, very uncomfortable. And, you know, so many people say, don't tell anyone that you're about to have a baby, keep it under wraps, all this kind of stuff. I didn't. I mean, I didn't necessarily put it on blast, but it wasn't something that I was hiding necessarily.
Mhm.
Um, because I believe that I don't want those people in my court, anyways. If you believe that women can't handle having a job and raising a family when you don't ask those questions to men, I don't want you on my cap table. I don't want you on my team. I don't want you near me because that's not the type of future that we're working towards. So I'm fine with weeding those people out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in the fact that obviously true, they don't ask that to men if they're having kids, like if you're about to retire, because it makes it seem like it's a retirement sentence. Like once you're a woman in high power, obviously the highest you can be is like a CEO, and they're like, "Oh, I'm having a baby." They're like, "Okay, do we need to start thinking about a succession plan almost?" And that really does stink. But is that, I guess now with COVID in effect, are you guys all remote or how are you guys doing it? All remote?
Yeah, we're currently all remote,
Uh,
which is very interesting because, when I'm on Zoom, people can't tell I'm pregnant.
yeah.
So it's, some people are like, wow, you've really tried to hide this. If you're starting a family, whether you're a man or a woman, that's your family business.
Yeah.
I don't think that women have to be, upfront or um, almost apologetic for moving on or living other parts of your life. And I strongly, strongly believe that. And I think we need to be more supportive of men who are working moms or starting a family and not give them almost this death sentence of their relevancy is over or your stage to start something is over because whether you're 20, whether you're 30, whether you're 40, 50, 60, I believe that if you want to do something, you always can.
No, I agree. I'm just more on this baby thing because in my field and like my studies and all that stuff, typically when especially a woman like has a baby, it makes them want to work harder because now they are not only providing, depending on your situation, obviously you're married, so you want to make sure your family, husband, and now future child are good. So that's going to push. Typically, it pushes people to work harder. So I don't understand still like why they would just think you would slack off, especially if they've listened to this point, the struggle it took for you to even get to this point, why you're just like, oh no, I had a baby, I'm done, instead of
Right.
going even
I'm
further.
too far in to quit.
Yeah, way too far in to quit. And just now having a baby, it's gonna be like, oh, now I really wanna provide for my family even more and I want to work even harder so that one day, and I'm not gonna say the gender, that's your business if you want to say it, that one day my child can see, boy or girl, that anything is possible because I literally just lived this life. So I want to set an example for my child. But yeah, that needs to stop with the death sentence just because you want to bring life into the world.
It's, it's tough. It's very unique to women. And I think that if you're a woman listening to this, if you've had those experiences, I think everybody has them. And um, they're, they're crushing experiences in terms of your mindset. But sometimes you just gotta shut up everybody else's concerns and then just keep moving forward.
Amen. Amen to that. Going back to Point, I don't. Do you know how many like people have downloaded Point, or is that like a super nerd question?
No, I actually don't look at downloads because you downloads sometimes can be much higher than your actual user rate. I actually haven't checked downloads in a while,
Mhm.
but we're about 20,000 users,
Oh,
and that's in Ohio, it's in Austin, Texas, in Denver. We actually have users in every 50 state, in all 50 states.
that's cool.
But of course, if you're asking me as a CEO and as a dreamer, I'm like, I want a million.
Mhm.
So we got to 20,000 users organically. We help around 350 nonprofits on our platform that use it for free, um, which is amazing. I remember trying to get the first 1,000 users.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, it was so hard. I used to stand up at literally on chairs at bars telling people to download the app. I mean, that's where we started from. And now, we get 1,000 users a month organically, and I'm not having to climb on tables anymore.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not now. Since you're pregnant, that'd be a little dangerous. It's a little dangerous. Before COVID, were you having to travel to like different states and do all that and presentations, or and now with COVID, is it just all Zoom, or have you had to travel?
So COVID hit the nonprofit world very, very, very hard. Some of people, most people don't know that during COVID, the nation had a volunteer shortage. And that sounds very, very dramatic. But what happened was that, especially in places of what we call critical community pillars in the nonprofit world, like food banks,
Mhm.
food distribution, food, wow, can't talk, food distribution centers,
Mhm.
they went from having full staff volunteers to almost no one overnight because older volunteers are the backbone of food distribution centers. So we're talking people of an age of 65, seniors, and all of those people all overnight had to be quarantined, right?
Mhm.
So now you have food programs, which 51% of food programs in the United States are completely volunteer run. Over half of all of our food programs in the United States are volunteer run. And when you have a decrease of work, you have increased need of food. increased food insecurity issues rise, which is still one of the number one problems during COVID. And you have no volunteers to help get the food out. So we have, in a matter of weeks, a crisis. So in Ohio, DeWine ushered in 300 National Guard members that were stationed at food distribution centers for months, almost 6 months, full time, because we did not have enough volunteers to go help out. So what Point did during that time was we were recruiting younger, lower risk volunteers to go help. That was very, very difficult because we had to educate people that you could actually go be an emergency volunteer if you hit certain qualifications, and it was okay to do so even with a stay-at-home order. So it was a very, very challenging time, but we were increasing our volunteers like an insane amount. We educated 500,000 people on how they could volunteer during COVID. We had 5 times the rate of nonprofits signing up for Point. And why were nonprofits signing up for Point at the time? Well, most nonprofits, especially in the Midwest, function off of Google spreadsheets and pen and paper. And it's wild. We have, again, the pillars, the organizational pillars that our community relies upon. These entities don't have the right technology to run their programs and recruit volunteers because either the tech is super, super expensive, like it costs them $7,000 a year to use it, or they're kind of scraping together free resources that really don't work. So what Point does is they give them an operating system and says, you can use this product, Point, kind of like Eventbrite and Salesforce made a baby for a nonprofit. And oh, by the way, we have this recruitment tool, which is our app, that you could also get the people power you need. So that's how the free tech and free, basically volunteer recruitment service through our app works. If you're listening to this, you should download Point.
Always have to do the plug. Always have to do the plug.
Find it on Apple, find it on Android, wherever you get your app. And it's an app that's like ClassPass for volunteering. You can volunteer for any cause near you. We're not in every city, but if you're listening to this outside of the cities that we are in, you can invite a nonprofit to join and get them started with all the free resources that Point provides. I think it's literally crazy that Elon Musk is making space cars. We're going to Mars and our nonprofits are using pen and paper. That makes me so mad that we have this dichotomy in our society that our tech thinking bigwigs, our big tech companies are making AR, AI, whatever, VR, can't talk. And our nonprofits are using pen and paper. It's messed up. And it's about time it changes.
Yeah, it really is. I guess the question too that I just had, because when you were talking about COVID and most of that, the food distribution volunteers being in that at-risk group, and then you were recruiting like the younger, like people who are less at risk. What's like Point's connections with the local colleges in like the Columbus area? Because obviously volunteering, especially when we went to Capitol, and like if you're in an organization, typically you need to volunteer, get volunteer hours. So what's like Point's connection with like an Ohio State, Ohio, a Capitol, or Ohio Dominican, things like that?
Currently, we don't have any colleges using our platform. Have we talked to every single college in the area? Yes. Have they taken the step to implement? No. And, that's also heartbreaking for me because those colleges have the chance and the opportunity to provide a resource to encourage their students to go do something. We work with high school systems. We have multiple high school systems that use Point to encourage their students to go volunteer. And that's what we're hoping is going to be the standard, right? Which schools provide, a free resource for their students to go volunteer. We can track their impact if they want us to track their impact. But after years and years of asking, I still don't have any colleges on board. I think we'll get there, but I think maybe they're just a bit slow to adopt. And I'm not throwing shade. I'm just telling you how it is.
Right.
And some of the easy wins you think would be expected, like, oh, of course a college would do this. Just sometimes they're not pulling the trigger.
That's interesting too, but a lot of colleges, I guess we're in that era where there's still a lot of things that are stuck in the old ways and they're not open to new changes because their old guard is still in effect. Maybe when a newer group, maybe a younger board of trustees or like a younger president of a university or whoever is in charge of whatever, get in there and they're just like, yeah, we need to adapt with the times because you guys are obviously adapting with the times and you're keeping up with the times and going forward. You guys are the way to go. So I guess with Point now, like what's the future for Point? Like I know you said that a million number, but what are other goals that you have going forward for you guys?
My main goal is getting nonprofits the tech tools that they need. I think with COVID, we've been launched basically 20 years in the future. Last year, I could never get a nonprofit to do a video chat with us. We had to fly to them. We had to go to their door and pull out a computer and show them how to use something. And, within 3 months of COVID, they're now using Zoom. So my hope and my goal is to bring nonprofits, especially local nonprofits. I'm not talking about the Save the Children's or the UNICEF or the Charity Waters. I'm not talking about national nonprofits that have millions of dollars. I'm talking about our community nonprofits that are in our communities that just don't have the resources like us. That's my goal. I want to get them on this platform because I want them to operate in a way that makes them absolutely efficient and easier and allows them to reach a younger volunteer crowd because they need it moving forward. They need it now because of COVID. They need it 10 years from now in the future. And we need to start building those connections and building those bases so our community thrives.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, especially with the volunteering and obviously you looking out for the little guy, the local people, because the bigger volunteer, like the units, like to Save the Children, all of that, they already have their millions and millions. And I think it also puzzles me too that those bigger, well, money, I guess, plays the biggest factor, that they don't help the littler organizations like get off the ground because if the goal and the mission of your organization is to help people, you would want to help other organizations that help people. So I just never understood why. But again, money plays a factor. But
I think it's also really interesting to note, especially because of Women's History Month, that most local nonprofits are run by women.
I did not know that.
Women are the backbone of our nonprofits. 75% of the nonprofit workforce nationwide is women driven. That's incredible.
Yeah.
85% of our users, our nonprofit users on Point, are women. Sometimes that pushes to 90%. That means women are the ones that are recruiting the people power to go solve the problems in our society. Our tech platform is specifically made for women. I believe that what we do at Point, and I tell my team this all the time, is to empower women to change their communities through tech. Because these women are the ones that are seeing the problems in their community, and they're the ones that are stepping up to solve them. And when you're thinking about the local homeless shelters, the local food distribution centers, the local initiatives to provide, different resources to human trafficking victims, those initiatives, 75% of the time are run by women.
Oh, it's crazy. I actually had no idea of any of those stats. I felt like I thought it was around like 60, but I didn't think it was 75 and above because that is crazy. And speaking of the Women's History Month, I feel like that's underreported because
right. I didn't know it either. And I was in the nonprofit space for a long time until I was looking at our numbers and I'm like, why are almost 90% of our users women? And I dug more into it and I kept on digging and I realized that the entire nonprofit industry across the US is powered by women.
I wonder if those people who think that when women have kids, they go into retirement, because I'm pretty sure some of those women do have kids and they're working full time and volunteering, just to circle back on those people. But Madison, honestly, I feel like I could talk to you forever since we haven't talked in so long.
I know.
But I do want to be conscientious of your time. So do you have any, obviously plug your stuff, do you have any shout outs, last words before we wrap this up?
Take out your phone. No one ever does when I'm like talking on a podcast or even
I
in
would
a.
do it right now, but don't. I honestly thought
Take out your phone.
fair enough.
Download
Back in the day, though, did have it on my old phone, like back in when you were like first starting. So just saying that. But since I've recently upgraded, I don't have all my apps back. So I will do it right now, actually. So now you can video proof.
Welcome to Point.
Doing it right. Well, if my thing would load. But continue on. I'm doing it right now.
Just search for Point wherever you get apps. And it's called Point Volunteer near you. And let us know. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Apple password. Continue.
Martin, it's been great talking with you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to catch up and thanks.
Oh, no problem. Typical spiel. Thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Make sure you like, rate, comment, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all of those things. Obviously, thank you, Madison, for taking gotta do the Face ID. Taking time out of your busy day to do this with us. It was super informative and super imperative for community service and volunteering and all that going forward. So we really thank you for that. Hopefully, one day in the future, we can have you on again when you are maybe at that million mark, or maybe when one of those big tech people like a Musk and them finally realize how important this is, and pour their tweets and their billions into you guys instead of tweeting about Bitcoin and Dogcoin. So yeah, and then obviously download the Point app. And Madison, if they want to reach out to you about volunteering, things like that, where can they reach out to you at?
You could reach out to my team at Point App on Twitter or on Instagram. They're probably faster than me. Or you can find me on social at Madison Mikhail. That's Mikhail.
There you guys have it. And if you missed that, just rewind and listen to it again. But thank you, everyone, for listening to the L7C podcast. Thank you, Madison, for being on. I hope you all have a great day and take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.